Data protection, one of Europe's hot topics. The protection and availability of personal information has become a contentious issue since the September 11th US terrorist attacks and the Madrid and London train bombings. With the introduction of the Prüm Treaty, the 7 signatory states have allowed access to DNA, fingerprint data and vehicle registration information. The aim of the treaty was to help law enforcement officers to combat terrorism and cross-border crime, which includes illegal immigration. This, along with US requests for access to passenger information, such as mobile phone records, credit card details, address, and also email information, has sparked fierce debate in the European Union. But has all this gathering of information made Europe a safer place? Are we in danger of losing our freedom for greater security? These are some of the questions our presenter Dora is going to be asking our panel on today's Youth Media Days show. But first, let's see what the European Data Protection Supervisor Peter Hustings said on the issues when he met our reporter Tassilo Grupa.
So we need to educate people, they need to be active, using their rights, they need to be critical citizens, follow politicians and ask for explanation. It is this explanation which is necessary. If they say, this is necessary, we say, why? What's the purpose? What do you really want? What are you going to give in return? What are the safeguards that this is going to happen only in the right balance? So we have to be insistent as citizens.
I'm here today with 3 experts of our subject, which is security data protection. I'd like to introduce them to you. Mr. Alexander Alvaro, member of the European Parliament, Speaker for Interior Issues of the ALDE Group. Joaquin Bayo Delgado, Assistant European Data Protection Supervisor, and Mr. Richard Corbett, member of the British Labour Party in the European Parliament. Thank you for coming here today. So today we are talking about personal information, and actually we have got some personal information about you. We know, for example, that Mr. Corbett, you have got 2 daughters, and Mr. Delgado, you prefer tea to coffee. So first of all, I'd like to ask you, what do you think? Is it too easy to get personal information?
Too easy? Well, we are there to try to make things not too easy enough to the purposes of getting this information, but in a lawful way. So easy is perhaps not exactly what I would say. It's a question of lawfulness, of getting this information. Whoever has to have this information should get it with all the guarantees, and whoever has no right to get this information should not get it.
What do you think, Mr. Corbett? Is it too easy to get these information?
That sort of information is not too difficult to get, but is probably not too much of a problem. What we're talking about is much more significant information, and it's a question of getting the right balance. What are the balance we're trying to get? It's between freedom and security.
But this is a question. What is the balance?
What is the
According
balance?
to you,
Yeah.
what is the balance?
Well, that you need to look at in individual cases. We're looking at the moment, for instance, on what data should passenger airlines, the passengers on airlines, what data should the authorities be able to have to see who is on that airline and find out about them. We're talking with the Americans. The Americans want access to a huge amount of data, which they would then wish to keep for many, many years, and without, in our view, sufficient guarantees about passing on the data to other authorities. There is a case to say, look what happened in America a few years ago. 2 huge jets flown into 2 of their buildings, which collapsed, killing thousands of people. You can understand why they're looking at this and why they want to see who's getting on airlines and why. But what is the right balance to be struck? And there is clearly at the moment a difference in view between Europe and America on this.
Yeah, we know that British government supports all these security measures, but do you think that Europe becomes safer with all these measures?
Well, hopefully in Europe we are bringing in measures that will make us indeed safer, but without being an undue restriction on people's freedoms. That's the balance we're trying to strike.
Yeah, in Great Britain, the increased use of CCTV in public places has caused a fierce debate recently. So, according to you, Mr. Alvaro, can we find a balance between security and privacy?
Well, of course, we can find a balance between security and privacy. It's just a question, as you pointed out before, where do we put the balance? And balance is always that what people interpret it. It's a way, for example, as you mentioned, CCTV in the UK, where there's a big discussion going on now. In London, on average, you're being photographed or filmed around 300 times a day, every person. But still, London is, due to one of the youngest statistics we have, still one of the most sort of cities where it can be, how do you say, a victim of a crime scene. So still, CCTV has not made anything more secure. The question is, when we're talking about raising security through out of measurements like what has been mentioned by Mr. Corbett, the passenger name records or other issues, is a question. We still have principles on the limitation of data. There must be a clear purpose why data is stored. And right now, I think we don't have a balance. It's going over the edge. We're storing communication data of persons, passenger name records, financial transaction data, and every member state has their individual tools too. So I think, and I believe, that we don't have a balance anymore between security and freedom.
Yeah, I think that the key word is right balance, and to assess what is right balance, then you have to have information about the purpose, about the conditions, etc. And in many cases we have already mentioned, like in the case of the SWIFT case, the case of the passenger data, to decide whether the balance is right, you have to, for example, know how effective those measures are. And this is something that we don't know. So in principle, you have to apply always the criteria of saying, well, fewer data, shorter periods of keeping those data are better than longer or more data. And then if you have more information about how effective is this, then you can really extract the balance and say, well, this is the right balance. But the impression that we have is the balance is always going in the side of the security, because we don't have enough information of this effectiveness. And this is something very worrying.
Mm-hmm. CCCT, I think, is a very interesting example, because when it was first introduced in Britain, Britain has more than most countries of that, people were indeed worried, gosh, everywhere I go I'm going to be filmed, etc. Now people are less worried about that. And why is this? Because look at the balance. What is the civil liberty you are sacrificing when you're being filmed in what is anyway a public place? It's streets, it's entrances to buildings and so on. If there was a camera in my bedroom, I'd be much more worried, of course. But no, this is in public places. So people can see, if they go through the vast volume of data, as you said, 30 times a day if you walk around London, who's going to process that? For what reason? It's such a huge amount of data. It will only be processed really in the context of a very serious investigation on a terrorist bomb or whatever. So you've not sacrificed very much. But on the other hand, the gain, remember we identified and arrested a number of terrorists in Britain thanks to that sort of data. So in Britain, that sort of thing, CCTV attitudes, public attitudes have shifted and become much more relaxed. But we are still rightly worried about some of the other things, like what you were just talking about, which remain an issue.
To specify that I'm ready. I'm ready to accept that this question of what is the sense of privacy or the limits of a person giving up his or her privacy, it's also a question of culture, but also a question of habit. Then things
and habits change, as they have in Britain.
Change. But the